on YouTube in a while. Yes, I think we are live now. Um, Welcome everyone to this paper presentation panel on the theme of gender, and the presentations will be chaired by Sangita Thebe Limbu from University College London, UK. Each panelist will have 10 minutes to present their work, followed by 5 minutes of Q&A from the audience, and I hope that all the audience will give their questions in the Q&A box, and we'll be able to ask those questions to the presenters. I now hand over to Sangita to begin the presentations. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Maji. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining us in this paper presentation session focused specifically on gender. And the presentations today will highlight various interconnected issues in relation to gender education in South Asia. So we will be hearing about the lived experiences of female university faculty members in Bangladesh and female school teachers in India, particularly around the additional challenges they have faced during this pandemic. On the other hand, we will also be hearing about the lived realities and aspirations of female college students in Pakistan and Indigenous female students in Nepal as they navigate higher education institutions. So I'm very looking forward to listening to the presentations myself. So in terms of the format of the session, Umaji has already outlined it so well. I just want to make a quick change that I think we will get through all the presentations first, and then we will have the Q&A towards the end. So if you have any questions, please send them through the Q&A chat box located at the bottom of the screen. And please do specify whom you are addressing the question to. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first presenter for this session. So Dr. Jasmine Jaim. So Dr. Jasmine Jaim completed her PhD in Business and Management from the University of Nottingham. Currently, she is the Associate Professor at the Institute of Business Administration, Jahangirnagar University, Bangladesh. Welcome, Jasmine, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Mask. Nowadays, mask symbolizes COVID-19 pandemic. Now, if we can unmask the mask, we can view that there are different gender-specific problems going on that are generally invisible to us. But the research paper is all about that from the perspective of university teaching. The title of the paper is Unmasking the Mask, Female University Faculty Members, Gender and COVID-19 in Bangladesh. I'm Jasmine Jaim. You already have an introduction about me, so I'm not going to the detail of it. I just directly move to my research. The literature has already established different challenges regarding the career of women. If we consider the ideal norms of working, then we can find that the organization expects the employees to work for long hours and to remain visible in the organization for a long time. In the South Asian context, these norms are particularly difficult for women professionals because of their high level of demand of domestic responsibilities. Another issue is important, respectable position. Given the norms of the society, women are not allowed to engage in different types of activities of the organization because of their concern about the respectable position in the society. That creates barrier for their career progression. As a whole, they are in a disadvantaged position in their career. However, this COVID-19 has changed the entire scenario of the professional platform. Let's consider the university teaching issue. It is already known that different public universities in certain South Asian contexts, if we teach the profession of teaching is considered as one of the most respectable occupation of that context. Here, during the normal period, the faculty members enjoyed a certain level of flexibility in terms of long hours and visibility. And during the pandemic, the activities have mostly moved to the online platform. Now, there remains an interesting area to explore how this pandemic affect the gender experiences of female academicians from the perspective of a South Asian country. The methodology is autoethnographic study. This feminist research explores my own experiences regarding teaching a public university of Bangladesh. I've come across different disadvantages. I'm just presenting the major findings here. First comes the family issues. The literature has widely discussed regarding the household responsibilities issues that affect negatively on their career during the pandemic. And what I want to add here that in Bangladesh, given the social distancing concern, we are not allowing the housemates at our home. That creates additional burden in our workload, and eventually that has an impact on our career. Now, if we consider the university perspective, I like to focus on concern for respectable position. It is already established in the literature that female professionals have figured out the way how to communicate with male professionals in the physical platform in a socially respectable way. So the physical platform, the office room, the public place where they can day-to-day interact with male colleagues provides some sort of flexibility in terms of their working environment, but remaining their respectable position in the society. Now, what happens during the pandemic is that women are, if a female colleague needs to communicate with a male colleague, particularly for the, say, professional obligations, the major way of communication is cell phone. In this society, talking over cell phone for a male professional with a female professional, particularly if the female professional is single, even it's for the professional obligation, still it is not accepted positively. So what happens that this kind of respectable positional concern creates barrier for women in discussing regarding their professional obligations or being aware about the issues going on in the university. While these are some disadvantages, interestingly, I have encountered some advantages during this pandemic period. Again, let's consider from the family perspective first. For certain activities, we can enjoy flexibility in terms of our domestic work. We can do the household work and academic work parallelly without compromising each of the sector. For example, I can switch on my washing machine, start the online class. After the class, I can get the clothes ready in the washing machine. Simultaneously, we can enjoy certain level of flexibility in our office work. For example, the literature has already established the problem of visibility of women in the organization. Male colleagues can remain in the organization for a long time, no matter whether they're utilizing the entire time for the organization or not. But female colleagues might be doing the same level of activities, but they are not visible in the organization for the entire period. So this visibility issue has been translated in terms of a sign of commitment or say dedication for the organization. And in that case, women were in a disadvantaged position. During the pandemic, because almost everything moved to the online platform, female academicians is in a better position by elevating this kind of long-standing visibility problem. I want to cite another example. Sometimes we need to work at night at the campus. Well, it doesn't mean that it is just problematic for our domestic sphere. Sometimes there's an issue of safety during traveling and some other gender-specific issues. But during the pandemic, as we can work from home, we don't have to be worried about these issues and we can fully concentrate on our work. So these findings of the research extensively advances our understanding regarding the gendered experiences of female professionals from the perspective of a South Asian country. More specifically, whereas the existing literature is mostly, almost exclusively focused on the negative aspects of pandemic on female professionals, this research potentially contributes by revealing some positive sides of the pandemic. Now, the question remains, how can we reflect upon this understanding, these findings, to have a better environment during the post-pandemic period? So I'm suggesting some policy practices, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is entirely focused on the improving work-life balance of the women professional. It is somehow the organization can be, or the university can be benefited from the potentiality of the women. So the first thing I would like to say about flexible work. During the pandemic, we have revealed that some of the works can be done at the online platform. Definitely online platform is not the ideal way of doing, but that is a doable thing, platform for many type of activities in our academia. So the meetings can be moved to the online platform to some kind of meetings. So that can provide flexibility to women. Again, home office for carrying responsibilities. It is socially expected that women will be more concerned about the caring issues, primary caregivers for the infants or elderly people in our society. So I would suggest that something like the maternity leave, women can be allowed certain months or years from their career to work mostly from home. So what will happen that women can be more engaged with their domestic activities with a not that stressful manner that they have to do during the physical platform, and the organization will not be deprived from their potentiality during the stressful period of the family life. Definitely, education is in crisis, but this research also finds some positive bright sides of the story. So if we can consider these issues fairly, positively, we might offer a better working environment, academic environment for the female professionals, and the organization or the university can be benefited from that as a whole. Thank you very much. If you have any question, I'd love to answer it at the end of the session.
Great. Thank you very much, Jasmine. Right on time. So 9 minutes and 46 seconds. Thank you for a very well-structured presentation. Gave us lots of food for thoughts, from care chains to social norms. It'll be quite interesting to think about how the existing social norms are being challenged as well. But perhaps that will come in the Q&A session. So now moving on to our second speaker for this session is Ruchi Saini. So Ruchi is currently a PhD student in International Education Policy at University of Maryland, College Park. Ruchi, over to you.
Yeah, hello. Good morning, everyone. I just want to make sure my screen is visible. Sangita, is my voice audible, my screen visible?
Yes, your screen is visible, your voice is audible.
Okay. So as Sangita pointed out, my name is Ruchi. I'm a second-year PhD student at University of Maryland, and I'm going to talk about 4 female school teachers' experiences with care work and online teaching during COVID-19. Now, to begin with, the why. What made me interested in this research idea is, first of all, across the globe, we are aware of the fact that even before lockdown, Indian women specifically were spending maximum hours on unpaid care work. And COVID-19 exacerbated the gender inequities that were already present. So typically, globally, the care work of women exacerbated. Now, on the one hand, you have that. And on the other, you have teachers who were called one of the frontline warriors. Of course, you had the medical community, you have the essential workers, but the teachers were also at the front line. More so because they were suddenly pushed to online teaching, and which created an urgency for digitization. So I was interested in seeing how did female school teachers navigate these two challenges. On the one hand, assuming that they had increased care work, which of course I explored more in the interviews. And secondly, how did they navigate online teaching? So just a very brief background in terms of women in care work. As as I read the literature, I realized there was, first of all, majority of the work was focused in the global north. And even there, most of it was quantitative. So they make use of time use surveys, specifically what are the hours women spend, men spend. So it's quantitative. Even when we come to qualitative and mixed method study, there was a tendency to present an essentializing picture of the third world woman. So when I say essentializing, what I mean is we use overarching terms like they're victims of subjugation, or they're agents, or they're rebels. So there's a tendency to use overarching terms. So the study hopes to generate new non-essentializing knowledge. The aim of the study is not generalization, it is localization, how every participant experienced care work and online teaching. So the two research questions is, what were the experiences of 4 female school teachers, and what strategies did they use when reconciling care work and online teaching? Very quickly, I'll go to the theoretical framework because I know we have limited time. So my theoretical framework is decolonizing feminist research. It actually connects to my introduction. So again, the same thing, Mohanty talks about it, the tendency to present third world women as a singular monolithic subject. And of course, it is a tendency within certain feminist scholarly literature, not all of them, but there does exist a tendency. So feminist researchers tend to use specific analytic categories, victims, rebels, agents, not realizing that a woman can have multiple identities at the same time. She could be a victim at some times, an agent at some times. She could be somewhere in the middle. She could be neither. So just problematizing that idea. So decolonizing feminist research basically foregrounds the participant voice. It's based on collaboration and reflexivity, and of course, questioning one's assumption. Even though I was raised in India, born there, I'm in the US for a PhD, still our understanding is colored to a certain degree by Western feminist scholarly literature. So you need to question that every time, during interviews, during analysis. So I'll get back to this later. In terms of the methodology, I used narrative research. So the very idea of narrative research is that you ask them stories. They're open-ended, they're collaborative, and this is in line with my theoretical framework. So the nature, you tend to ask them stories. They're not a typical Q&A. The question is not, okay, what are your views about it? No, the question is, can you share a story where you experienced this? So they're more open-ended. I used a specific form of narrative inquiry called, also Sangita, just let me know if I go beyond time because I see something in the chat, but I also have my timer, but just let me know, okay? You can just interrupt me.
Sure.
So in terms of the research method, I used episodic narrative interviews. So I asked them for specific episodes. I won't go into detail about how I analyzed it, but I do want to share a bit about it. So I followed a 6-step procedure to actually produce 4 separate stories, which I then got verified by the participants. So this is the kind of story, you can't read it, you don't have to read it, just wanted to give you an idea. So this is a condensed version, but I formed 4 such stories, which were like first-person narrative accounts, got them verified, and it is all in their words. All I did was remove the questions, remove extraneous events, followed a specific process, and I carried out a thematic analysis of the 4 stories. Very quickly, I had 4 research participants. They're all pseudonyms. All of them worked at private schools. I made use of convenience and snowball sampling. As you can see, 2 of them were contractual teachers, 2 of them were permanent, 2 of them lived with their extended family. So it was a diverse set. I just worked with whatever participants I could get. So again, the aim was not generalization. So in terms of findings, I had 4 findings. There are 4, not 1. I tried working on them, but okay. So we had technological challenges and anxiety, lack of professional training, exacerbation of care work, blurring of the personal and the professional. For this presentation, I'll just focus on technological challenges and anxiety. So in terms of technological challenges and anxiety, in line with the literature review, all the participants obviously faced technological challenges. They talked about Zoom bombing, talked about security issues, network issues, and challenges with correcting papers. What I thought was a significant finding, which I did not read a lot in my literature review, was the feeling. All of them talked about feeling stressed, embarrassed, scared, or anxious whenever they encountered a technical problem. So in case of, say, Akanksha, who was actually a mother of 2 kids and a permanent teacher, she said that whenever there was an error, I would get a panic attack because the school authorities would then say that I'm not able to control my class properly. A very important point is the idea of surveillance. So, what the online platform did, and all the teachers talked about this, is that the principal could enter the class anytime and see what they're doing. And when you actually connect this to the challenges they faced, most of them felt anxious. Manasvi and Disha, both of them were contractual teachers. So their anxiety was primarily linked to losing their jobs because a lot of other contractual teachers had been removed from their jobs. Disha, in fact, had a baby and was removed from her job in March 2020. She was asked to not come back, and then she was again offered it in 2021. So for them, technological challenges and surveillance meant that they were perpetually in fear. So you have Manasvi who says, when my internet connection was not working, I felt every day that I would lose my job. Disha said something similar. So the implication of this to me is, first of all, the culture within Indian classrooms continues to be hierarchical. So if there's a technological challenge, you just can't have a laugh about it. You can't be like, oh, we just had a challenge. Let's take it lightly. No, teachers took it very seriously. And the stress is compounded by the awareness that they are under constant surveillance. So I've talked about this before. So the three other findings, very quickly, lack of professional training. To me, the question that it pointed at is these are 4 teachers at private schools with okay infrastructure. So what was the case with teachers maybe in rural areas or less infrastructure? So that, because even they had challenges, exacerbation of care work and blurring of the personal and the professional. So in terms of the overall implication of the study, overall, first I think is the fragile job market. I think we need to take into account the plight of teachers who are on a contract globally. And this is an issue across the globe. And we often talk about government teachers, but even private school teachers took a major brunt. So we need to talk about that. Also need to question the role schools play when it comes to being accountable to the well-being of their teachers. To me, it felt that, I have 20 seconds. So to me, it felt that they were just creating a lot of hurdles instead of being supportive. Support of the family was a key. Children and in-laws were a source of support, but the husbands were still largely missing. And as I said, a caveat, all of the participants were from middle income families, so we need to be wary of generalizing. Their experiences would obviously be different from women if I were to interview women from lower income families. So, yeah, thank you. I hope that I stuck to time.
You did. You definitely did. Thank you, Ruchi. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, it was really interesting to see how existing power structures get reconfigured. For example, by technology. And I really like the word Zoom bombing a lot. So that's a new addition to my vocabulary. I would also like to request all our audience to send in their question, if you have one, via the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. And we will, I will ask those to our presenters towards the end. So the next speaker we have is Sharmila Shyangtan. And Sharmila Shyangtan Tamang is an independent researcher based in Kathmandu, Nepal. She completed her postgraduate degree from Kathmandu University School of Education. Sharmila ji, over to you.
Can you see my slide? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see your slides as well.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and lots of fabula to everyone. I'm Sharmila Shyangtan from Nepal, My topic for today's presentation is Education for Whom? Indigenous Women's Experience in Higher Education in Nepal. So this study is inspired by my own experiences in higher education as an Indigenous woman from Tamang community or marginalized community from Nepal. And my experience in higher education shows that Indigenous women's access to higher education is very limited, and their layered experiences are often ignored. So here the historicity means locating social categories associated with concrete relations and domains of practice within a broader temporal and spatial context, as NUES 2000 mentioned. So it look at the temporal, it look at the power play over the time and specific place, and it helped me to reflect on the historical trends of Indigenous women to identify macro influences in the in having access and participation in higher education. As we know, higher education opens door for financial stability and economic opportunities, as World Bank 2017 also mentions, like higher education graduates have, estimate a 17% financial beneficial than in comparing to the primary 10%. So however, access to higher education has been limited due to gender, caste and ethnicity, social class and geography for Indigenous women. And even if one gets into get access, their participation and experiences are not part of the narrative of higher education. So Indigenous people face historical injustice due to the social structure which shaped their access in terms of social, economic, political, and education as well. So here, there's no data on higher education in terms of social class group, and but I was able to get through the study done by Supa et al., which shows that there is a distinct disparity and inequality in higher education among the social group in terms of caste and ethnicity. So my argument for this study is like spaces like higher education often turn blind eye to Indigenous women's access, participation, and experiences. So I have used narrative inquiry for my study, which is a process of collaboration between the researcher and participant in storytelling and restoring. So I believe stories have power and tell a lot about the lived experiences of the individual, as Conley and Clarendon also mentioned that individuals' lived stories as a data source in narrative inquiry, and as well as I align with Kim 2016, who mentioned that personal story as a portal to understand the larger society. So the experiences of Indigenous women reflect the scenario of higher education in Nepal. And in this research, I have tried to touch by the ethics of research relationship, and I maintain ethics throughout my research study. So the theoretical lens that I have used is intersectionality, which is coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. And as we understand intersectionality, help us to examine how the different social identities construct one another, and also help us understand how power comes to play and collides in shaping the experiences of Indigenous women. So here my three participants are Lalita Magar, Sima Limbu, and Vidushi Rai, and all these are pseudonyms except their ethnic group. So Lalita shares her story, like from the time of getting citizenship, even from the government officer questioning her, why do you have to study, and you are going to get married off to British Army. And that kind of stereotypical and questioning is also faced in the educational institution and in the classroom also. And she also never attend any classroom. However, she actually went for her master's program. She did went to to attend a class for a week, and where she could not make friends, as we understand and know that there are very few Indigenous women in the classroom. So because of that, she did not join the classes, but was able to complete her master's degree. And for the MPhil program, they actually have to attend all the classes. That's why she was present in the class, and there she could sense the biasness. And this, as Heaton and Lesson mentioned, there are powerful stereotypes that operate in the classroom. And also, Lalita, things like there is kind of structural problem in the society as well as in higher education. She very funnily shared to me that even a bus conductor don't believe that I'm a student of MPhil degree when I saw my valid identity card. You know, that's kind of the structure and stereotyping for Indigenous women. And Seema Limbu also, she hails from Dharan district, and she had been through higher education by earning for her self-survival and education. After her like grade 10, she had been on her own, like supporting herself through journalism, and she also never attended any classes and all. So the class experiences she have is of the MPhil degree. However, in her, while sharing with me, she shared an interesting story how there is a state have a systematic ignorance of Indigenous language and promoting of one language only, like the Sanskrit language. There in her place, Dharan, there is a Gurukul. So once you complete that, you will be able to, you know, have grade 11 and 12. Then you can have till master's degree. You have that kind of Sanskrit language degree. But in the same place, there are Limbu and Tamang language that are being taught to grade 2 and 3, and that and they don't have the same chain to till higher education as the Sanskrit language have. So there's this kind of you know, discriminatory in terms of language for the Indigenous people. And for the for my participant Bidusi Rai, she also comes from Solukhumbu, but however her mother was single, and she did get access to higher education, and she was married early off, and she had to balance childcare, study, and work. And she was able to attend class only when she was in master's degree. And as being a woman from Indigenous group, she felt that she was very much outspoken and have an opinion, and she was always questioning her teacher, and due to which she would be often called, how much does this Raini talk, and question, you know. And she told that there was impact of that, but she was there to learn and to understand. So in this way, there are the different layers of experiences of the Indigenous women in higher education. And in discussion and conclusion, I found that there is very much minoritization of Indigenous women in higher education, and there is layers in their experiences and identities in terms of gender, geography, language, and social class as well. And also in Nepal, higher education is very much urban-centric and expensive. Although all my participants were attending public government school, they had like, you know, due to the socioeconomic class, they had the problem of, you know, attending the classes and giving more priority to jobs. And also higher education is not sensitive towards Indigenous knowledge and language. And there is often Indigenous women's experiences are overlooked, and there persist you know, inequality and historical injustice, but that have not been addressed. So lesson for the post-pandemic is intersectionality lens in Indigenous women. They face layers of different experiences because of their caste and ethnicity and class, language, and geography that needs to be taken. And to have inclusive higher education, access is not only about enrollment, but also having meaningful participation for the Indigenous women, and as well as the successful graduation. And there needs to be initiative to address this inequality, digital divide, and promote diversity among student, faculties, and administration. As through my stories of my participant, we found like the numbers of student, faculty, and administrators of Indigenous people are very, very low. And also for the higher education institution, their needs of Indigenous people and community should be addressed. That could be like by opening a department that focuses on community Indigenous community research center, or maybe have a pathway for Indigenous children and students to have access to higher education, and likewise to have sensitive towards the Indigenous communities, language and knowledge integration into the higher education. So these are my references. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Sharmila, and thank you again for highlighting some of those pre-existing issues and also systemic inequalities that gets manifested in really different forms, from stereotypes to linguistic hierarchies and many other forms. And I guess as we think about what does it mean to rethink education, I think we might also need to consider how do we address those systemic issues. So thank you for that. And last but not least, our final speaker for this paper presentation session is Minha Khan. Minha Khan is a student of sociology and education at Stanford University. She is also a social policy consultant at the Citizens Foundation, Pakistan, and researcher at Noura Health in the US. Minha, over to you.
Thank you so much. I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay, I hope everyone is able to see this okay? Great, okay.
Yes.
So the topic I will be presenting on today is the importance of indifference, and what I examine here is the influence of households on the education and aspirations of female Pakistani college students. And so we'll go over the background of the study, the methodology I used, what I found, and how this applies to policy, practice, and research in the future. So where we started with this research was when I was going through all the existing literature, I found that household involvement in a child's education was found to improve educational outcomes. However, lower income parents are less involved in a child's education than middle income parents and higher income parents, who often help with homework or making networks or encouraging them to go for extracurricular activities. As a result, lower income students were found to be at a disadvantage because their parents were less involved in their lives. But there were limitations to this current research. Firstly, there was no clear definition of what household involvement meant. And secondly, a lot of these theories were based on research conducted in the Western context and then applied generally to all contexts. So the question I set out to answer is, what is the influence of households on the education and on the aspirations of female Pakistani college students? And the reason this matters is only 2.7% of all Pakistani women are able to make it to the college level. This is much less even when compared to other South Asian nations. And one of the biggest reasons why this is happening, which is often cited in literature, is because households do not allow women to be able to pursue a college education. So I set out to ask 3 questions. What is the influence of households on student educational attainment, aspirational attainment, and how do households shape the general attitude of students towards education? To be able to answer this question, I conducted research in Karachi, Pakistan. I first contacted colleges and I asked them if they would be comfortable sending out an email to all of their female students. The students that contacted me saying they were interested, I qualified them to be able to be in the study. They had to identify as female, low income, and currently be enrolled in college. Finally, I conducted remote interviews via WhatsApp because of the pandemic situation. A total of 46 interviews were collected. They were from a range of different ethnic backgrounds, but all of them were low income, were college students at different institutions, and their household structure varied from single parent to 2-parent to extended large family settings. Once I received the interviews, I then transcribed them, categorized them through inductive coding, and then finally developed a model for understanding the general role of households and the experiences of students with their households when it came to education. And here is what I found. Firstly, and most importantly, households matter. Households matter, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, when students are no longer going to school, but school is coming home to them. When you look at household involvement, it can be broken down into 2 different categories: household behavior, what they do, and household attitude, what they believe. Household behavior is the action. Are you involved or are you uninvolved? Household attitude, on the other hand, is the belief. Are you supportive of education? Do you not care at all? Or are you completely unsupportive of your child's education? And you can map household attitude and household behavior on this matrix and see how the different experiences, depending on how involved your household is or how they feel about your education, can really impact the trajectory of your education as well as your career. And you see a story emerge through this. You see that the narrative is those who can follow their dreams and those who can't. First, we'll go ahead and look at what it means for students to be following their dreams. As you can see from this table, there are 3 categories of households where students are able to follow their aspirations. And I will go into each one of these categories next. The first category is an uninvolved and supportive category. This is when the household is not involved in your decisions, but they believe in you, they trust you, they support you regardless. This provides students with a supportive environment, but no expectations or pressure. No one is telling them who to be or what to be. They're saying we support you regardless. Then there's an involved and indifferent category. This is when the person doesn't really care about your education, but they want to be involved, which is nice because then you have somebody to navigate your journey with while also maintaining your independence and being able to make decisions for yourself about your education and about your career. And finally, and one of the more surprising categories is that when households are uninvolved and indifferent about your education, students actually have complete freedom to follow their dreams without worrying about expectation or having somebody else interfere in who they want to be or what they want to be. However, there is another side to the story. Out of the 46 students, there were some who were not able to follow their dreams. And those students belong to these 3 categories. The first is the involved supportive category. And this is often counterintuitive. You think, previous literature has said, and often our own experiences say that when parents are involved, when parents really want to support you, probably it's going to be great. However, what you find from the research is that students end up inheriting or acquiring aspirations from their household members when household members are involved and supportive. Instead of following their own dreams, they end up following their household's dreams. The next category is the households that are involved, but completely unsupportive of their education. There is no chance for educational attainment here because not only do they not believe that you should have an education, but they are involved enough in your life to make sure it does not happen. The third category is the uninvolved and unsupportive category. This is a high-risk group without a known outcome just because the household is unsupportive, but they're not very involved in your life. Maybe you can slip by, you can go to school, you can try extracurriculars, just don't involve them too much. So it is an unknown category. And so through these different experiences, you see some trends come forth about household influence. The first, that lack of involvement can actually be a good thing, contrary to current research in the West. As you can see from this table, the only 2 categories where it is ensured that you will be able to follow your own aspirations is when your household is not involved in the decisions you are making. You find that household involvement is only positive when households are supportive of your education and they have the social capital to be able to guide you accordingly. The second trend we see is that indifference can also be positive. This again goes against what we've been hearing from the current literature. As this table shows, the 2 categories where you are sure to follow your aspirations is when the household attitude is indifferent. And the reason behind this is that indifference can provide students with the ability to pursue their dreams, but no pressure, expectations, or fear of what will my household say. So what implications does this have for the future of research, policy, and practice? First of all, this contributes to our understanding of the multitude of ways in which household involvement can manifest itself in the life of a student. There's no one way, there's no one experience of a student and their relationship with their household. And secondly, it really emphasizes that you cannot generalize the influence of households on student educational and occupational outcomes, and there is a need to reevaluate these theories across multiple contexts before claiming any sort of generalizability and developing interventions based on that. As for the implications for policy and practice, the first recommendation is that there is a need for female student mentorship. Students, whether or not their households are involved in their lives, feel very alone as they're navigating these new terrains. There's a need for females to have other students or other mentors who are able to guide them, able to understand their experiences and say, we are going to help you as you make your decisions about the future. Secondly, there's a need for household counseling. where a counselor at the school can come into the household, understand their context and say, here are all the different myths you might have about female education, about your daughter's education, and here's how we can address it. Working together with the households is essential in ensuring that households do not become a barrier for student education. And finally, financial aid provision. This is common amongst many students across Pakistan and across South Asia. Without financial aid, many of these women who are already making the 2.7%, the minority of the minority, will not be able to continue their education. As we speak today, all the girls who were interviewed in the study are trying to get the same scholarships, and very few of them exist. And so without financial aid, none of them will be able to follow their dreams, regardless of what their household experience has been. Thank you all so much for listening, and I look forward to receiving questions from everyone.
Great, thank you, Mihna. That was, again, another fascinating presentation. Again, as we hear more about the importance of increasing access to higher education, I think, your findings really speak to, those issues. At the same time, I would be really interested to think about, households and also, different forms of capital, like, social, cultural, financial, and what creates those indifference or or helicopter parenting, some of the new terms that I've been hearing. Okay, on that note, I would like to thank all our participants for staying on time. You all presented within 10 minutes. That's absolutely amazing. And that leaves us, so it's about, I would say about 12 minutes, 13 minutes for Q&A session. So I would like to request our audience to send in their questions. We already have some questions up here. So Ruchi, this question is for you from Rajalakshmi Guru. And first of all, she says, thank you for highlighting decolonizing feminist research. And her question to you is, can you shade something on reason on missing husband, if there were any negotiation with them or they were never part of the equation to seek help? If there was negotiation, what still makes them missing in support system?
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for engaging and the question. Now, there were 4 participants. So in the case of one, she had her mother-in-law who was helping, so there was no need for negotiation. It was almost as if the female again takes over the care work, but it's the mother-in-law. So there was no negotiation. Nonetheless, the husband was missing. I'm not sure if the right word now would be missing, because that's me using my own vocabulary, right? So thank you for the question. In the case of others, so there were 2 participants. The husband used to work till 8. So again, there was no negotiation. The women were okay with that. Just as a researcher, I could see that it was missing. But because the husbands used to work till 8, their children took over the household work. So in any which case, it was either the mother-in-law, own mother, or the kids. The husband was missing, but yes, the word missing is my vocabulary, so maybe I'll just think of a better word for that. But yeah, thank you for the question.
Great, thank you, Ruchi. And this question is from Ruchi, our fellow panelist, to you, Sharmila. The question is, thank you for the presentation. That's the comment. And the question is, I was wondering what factors inspired, encouraged them to go for higher education despite all the challenges?
Thank you for the question. So for my participants, mostly it was their self-motivation, and as well as, like with higher education access, there are a lot of job opportunities, and also experiences. So because of that, despite having difficulties, actually they were living in the rural villages, and they just have access to till grade 10. So they have to travel to nearby cities or come to Kathmandu for higher education. So it was their own self-determination, as well as, like everyone, there is a concept like you have to study. So these people were more resilient, and able to face all kind of hurdles. That's where they could come to MPhil degree, because a lot of the indigenous people who are, in poor academically or do not have that kind of resilience will be actually dropping out by grade 10 or grade 5.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
And then there is a question from Minha, and this is also from Ruchi.
But you can take other people's questions. I just ask a lot of questions. Okay, so yeah, if there are other questions, you can
Yeah, sure. I think this is a really good question. So yeah, thank you for asking this. So this is for Minha. So the question for you is, I was wondering, how does one differentiate between household aspiration and personal aspiration? To what extent is the latter influenced by the former?
Absolutely, that's a great question. As for the first part of it, how do you differentiate between personal and household aspiration? The answer to that is just asking the students, and you hope that they're able to, in their own experiences, reflect with you and understand, what is it that I want? What is it that my parents want? And so, some questions that I ask them is that, what did you want to be when you were growing up? What were your dreams when you were little? What are your dreams now? How did that change? Why did you take these particular subjects at school? And when they start talking about their experiences, they themselves start to realize, I guess I'm becoming a doctor because my mom wanted me to. Like, I never used to play doctor as a kid. I used to play teacher as a kid. What happened? And so in their reflection, they're able to kind of try and piece that together. And with regards to how much they overlap or how much they influence one another, of course, that's one of the main findings of the study, is that, when your household is such an important part of your life, which it is for all these students, there is a lot of overlap, I think, and the difference really comes not in who is influenced and who is not, but that who is taking advice from their households and then who is being pressured by their households. So all the students, or many of them, will go to their households and say, what do you think? But at the end of the day, they get to make the decision. Whereas other kids will go, their parents will come to them and say, we want you to be X, Y, and Z. And now the final decision is out of their hands. And so, yes, there is definitely influence, but really where that dividing factor comes is who makes the final call on the pursuit of education and aspirations. Thank you for that question. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Minha, and there's another question for you in the Q&A chat box, which you have answered. But if you could just, summarize it again, for our audience. So the question was by Minha Khan, and her comment is, great presentation, Minha. And the question is, how did you define low income for your research?
I completely relied on students to be able to self-categorize themselves. And so when I was reaching out to colleges, I specifically reached out to colleges that existed within lower income communities in Karachi. And then I sent out an email saying, here are the different qualifications I need if you want to be part of the study. And if you yourself identify with all of these categories, please contact me. And so, female, low income, and currently enrolled in college. So all of these categories were self-determined. And that's how I received my participants.
Great, thank you, Minha. And the other question is for Sharmila ji, and it's from Rajalakshmi Gurumji. And the comment is, Sharmila, thank you for your wonderful research. One of your participants talked about her natural instinct to ask questions was not appreciated in the classroom. Can you shed more light on this? Did Indigenous women, who mostly come from communities who are considered to be less hierarchical, face any challenges due to hierarchical plus guru-teacher relation in higher educational institution in Nepal? That's a really good question. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, my participants shared, they were very outspoken, and as belonging to Indigenous community, I am not that outspoken, and for me, questioning and all is very difficult. But however, for my participants, yes, they were very outspoken, and they shared how they being open about a lot of topics, and even with interacting with teachers and questioning them, it was kind of considered, they get intimidated by that, and and even within the peer group also, if you are interacting and asking teacher direct questions, and the peer would when the class is over, the peer would say don't interact with the teachers, in terms of don't have the direct interaction, just try to have that subtle language that doesn't impact your presence or in terms of grading. Yeah, that kind of experiences were shared by the participant. But they were very vocal, and I think they were there for learning. And so like for them, more than grading, it was more about questioning and learning. So that kind of attitude was there. And I think because of that attitude also, some of my participants shared like they were remembered by the teachers after, like because the classroom will be like more than 60 plus students and all. Yeah, but that kind of hierarchy is there, like to be a little bit subtle, but they were very much open, and I think because of that nature they were able to survive and be where they are, I think. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sharmila. And yeah, I guess those are all the questions and comments we have. We still have 4 minutes to go, please. So please do send in your question. I have a question for Jasmine. So Jasmine, thank you once again for your presentation. One is that I was very fascinated by autoethnography, and if you could just elaborate on that a little bit more. And the other question is, higher education setting or university or academic spaces are such that, in order to establish yourself, you have to constantly keep on producing. So it's like, you just have to constantly produce, do research, etc. So in your own experiences, I mean, how has the pandemic affected that whole process of being an academic, and what are some of the gendered dynamics to that? Yeah.
Thank
Jasmine?
you very much. I couldn't get your first question. Can you kindly repeat? It was like internet problem, perhaps.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sorry, I asked 2 questions at the same time. So one was just thinking about autoethnography and, autoethnography as a method. And, because you sort of went on to recommend lots of policy, suggestions as well based on that. So, just reflections on what is, autoethnography and how did you go about it, and can it be generalizable, or, is that even the right question to ask? So that was my first question.
Thank you very much. Yeah, autoethnography is based on my own experiences. Generally, we can't go for the generalization because it's my own experience, but I just like to provide my view, because ethnographic study is good when things are very complicated. So COVID-19 is something that we haven't imagined in our whole life. So it's a very unusual case. So I like to find out what's going on from my experiences. So that can be something that I can easily understand. And if I can disseminate my learning, then that will be helpful for others to have an idea about the entire scenario. So that is one, and I use the feminist standpoint, feminist theory, so feminist view, so that my experiences, like as a women's experience, so I say it about myself, like a gendered experiences. So I believe that it's not that men will say what is the problem about the women, so rather I can say what is my problem as a female academician. And then your second question is about the research. Yes, it depends. Here I would say that I'm comparatively in an advantageous position because I'm single, so I don't have the problem with the children and other things that many women are really struggling during this period to maintain the household responsibilities and the organizational work. But for me, it's comparatively easy, and the university classes, I don't have to travel to my university now. So it takes maybe around 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours per day to go just for the transportation. So if I can save that time and energy, I can concentrate for my students and I can concentrate for my research. So it's not exactly like you can say to some extent it's a gendered experience, but yes, it's really helped me in that manner. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you to all our presenters for sharing their wonderful work with us today. I've really enjoyed listening to them all, and I'm sure our audience have enjoyed listening to them as well. I think, Mina, there is a comment for you. So if you could just look at it in the chat box. So it's 4:45 p.m. here, British Summer Time. So that's the end of our presentation, our paper presentation session. So once again, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to the organizing team. And I hope you have a wonderful day, night, week ahead. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was a wonderful end to our paper presentation panels at the conference. And thank you so much, Sangita, for chairing this session. And to all the presenters of this panel as well, thank you so much for sharing your research with us. Jasmine, Ruchi, Sharmila, and Mina, thank you so much, everyone. That brings us to the end of our roundtables and presentations. We can now move on to our closing thoughts and the final performance that we have from a young South Asian spoken word artists who will be giving us their creative take on the topic of education. So do stay with us till the end. Before we go on to the closing event, and as we are coming to the end of this conference, it'll be really good to get some more feedback as new people are joining in this session as well. So I will launch a poll to which will have few questions on how you've been finding this conference, and there'll be two questions that will now pop up on your screen, and we'd be really most grateful if you could send us some of your responses. It'll give us a sense of how this event was and how you found it. I'm just going to launch the poll now. Now, the two questions would have popped up on your screen. It'd be really nice if you could send us some of your responses. We're also waiting for participants from the other room to join us in this room, so I'll keep this on for a minute or so. Did it close for some reason? Okay, so I think you can see the results now on your screen. Okay, we'll now move on to the final part of our program. We will be, after the closing thoughts from Karen Valentine and vote of thanks from Nanika Mathur, we will also have final performance of young South Asian spoken word artists. So do stay with us till the end. I would now like to invite our conference convener Karen Valentine from Aarhus University, Denmark, to give a closing thoughts at the conference. Karen, over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? I'm not sure about the sound. Can you please? It's
yes,
okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, on behalf of the conveners Uma, Pradhan, Mohini Gupta and myself, as well as the support team, I would like to thank you all, the speakers for dedicated and fascinating presentations, and the audience for constructive and engaging inputs to the discussions. It has been hugely interesting and insightful, and covered so many different aspects which will be impossible to touch upon now. So I'll just share a few thoughts with you, and I believe that you, like all the school kids around the world, might be a bit Zoom fatigued by now, so I'll only spend a few minutes to share these thoughts with you. The title of the conference has been Education in Crisis, which, as you will all, of course, have noted, carries a doubleness. Crisis as a context for education, and crisis as a breakdown of educational institutions, systems, and practices, at least temporarily. As the presentations have all illustrated, these two aspects are, of course, deeply intertwined. Educational institutions have entered into deep crisis due to a global crisis, the pandemic. Oh, sorry. The purpose of this conference has been to shed light on COVID-19 as a context for education in South Asia. And this, of course, has been the focus of all the presentations. Meanwhile, we shouldn't forget that COVID-19 has not replaced other large crises in South Asia, or for that matter, anywhere else in the world. Natural disasters and wars do not coordinate with COVID-19, but just makes the effects of COVID even worse. And this, of course, comes on top of enduring poverty and social marginalization, which, as many of the presentations have convincingly shown, have only been reinforced. One of the fundamental changes in the educational system during the pandemic has, of course, been the digitalization of education. On the one hand, this has created opportunities for school children, teachers, academics, for people like us being able to share thoughts and experiences. And given the conditions, it might have been the best alternative to entirely closed schools and colleges. But as we all know, it has also led to greater digital divides, with the economically marginalized and girl children paying the highest price. Education is a lens through which to understand society, and the society replicates itself through its education system. Hence, while taking seriously the implications the crisis has for the most vulnerable, and acting against this, we must also consider what it does to, for example, class and gender relations more generally, to sociality, and to our way of being in the world. For example, the demand for social distancing, a term where social and physical distance is being conflated in problematic ways, carries very particular meanings in a South Asian context. How may this possibly reenact modes of being which are discriminatory and repressive within and beyond educational systems and institutions? As was apparent from today's section on private and non-state schools, we may also have to rethink both public-private divides in education, as well as the role of other competing educational providers, be they religious institutions or tuition centers, in the light of the pandemic. While all have been radically challenged by the current crisis, some have been better equipped to tackle it and may even have profited from the situation. So it's important to remember that a crisis like this has a lot of losers, but it also has some winners, someone who can profit from it. On the other end, online education may not always be compatible with certain pedagogical traditions and educational philosophies, those of a more spiritual, tactile, or environmentally oriented character. Over the last 2 days, we have had a glimpse into many different corners of South Asia. And there are obviously many similarities, especially when we focus on the marginalized segments of society. Yet we all know there are huge regional and national differences based on different colonial legacies, religious orientations, and positions in the global economy, which are all filtered into complex regional geopolitical interests. This will unavoidably render visible through education systems and practices around the region. So while there's an urgent need for joint action to solve the education COVID crisis, it's equally important to recognize the differences that exist within South Asia in order to solve those. Seen from my corner of the world, Denmark, many of the problems that children, parents, and teachers have encountered over the last 1.5 years are very recognizable from what I've heard in this conference. Children and young people have suffered immensely from social isolation. Teachers did not have the needed competences to teach online, at least in the beginning. Children growing up in homes with violence and various forms of abuse did not any longer have the school as a safe space with trusted adults, and especially immigrant populations bear the brunt of increasing stigmatization, and I could go on. However, the comparison probably ends here. The huge difference between South Asia and Europe, in very broad terms, of course, is of course the scale and the depth of the crisis. In terms of access to and distribution of educational institutions, the resilience of both educational systems, healthcare systems, and infrastructures, and unfortunately also the position of populations and countries in the global race for vaccines, which at the end of the day is critical for the pandemic to come to an end. This takes us back to the question, are we discussing education in a pandemic or post-pandemic time? I'm afraid it's far too early to claim the latter. As many of the presentations have highlighted, the education crisis in South Asia existed before the pandemic. Hence, the pandemic can also be seen as a potential turning point, a much needed opportunity to reconsider and transform existing practices. As we have heard, especially in many of the roundtable discussions with practitioners who are dealing with this on an everyday basis, this is also a chance to reconsider curricula, both in terms of content and didactic practices, to constructively use online education to democratize education and knowledge, and to reorganize taken for granted educational routines and schedules. The last 1.5 years has provided a fertile ground, despite the devastating effect, for exploring new modes of learning and teaching. And we hope this conference has contributed to spark new discussions and brought all those ideas and reflections into dialogue. Going forward thus, we hope to create a network of academics and practitioners working in the field of education in South Asia. For this, we'll shortly reach out to all of you for your guidance and your support, and we hope you will continue the dialogue with us. Once again, thank you very much for your time and engagement. I'm looking forward to further conversations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen, for bringing the themes of the conference together and summarizing it so well. It was our privilege to work together with you on this conference and all the other projects that we are collaborating on. I now invite Professor Nainika Mathur, Associate Professor in Anthropology of South Asia, University of Oxford, to give a vote of thanks. Over to you, Nainika.
Yeah, please unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. So I was just saying, thank you so much, Uma. Thank you so much for having me here. It is such a privilege to be able to listen in on this wide-ranging conversation on education in South Asia over the past 2 days. I have unfortunately missed some of the sessions, but I look forward to catching up on them through the YouTube channel and the recordings which are already up on your fantastic website. Now, I cannot add anything substantive after Professor Valentine's excellent summing up points right now, but I do want to very, very emphatically thank the organizers of the event, Professor Karen Valentine, Dr. Uma Pradhan, and Mohini Gupta for pulling this entire conference together. I think all three of you are to be congratulated for the manner in which this event has brought academics and practitioners into dialogue, for the comprehensive way in which all the states of South Asia have been pulled into a similar arc of thinking. I don't think I've ever actually attended a conference on South Asia where you actually see people from, very different parts of the region come together and talk about sort of collaborations, talk about similarities and differences around this concept of education. I was also really fascinated by the precision with which we're now coming to understand the impact of the pandemic in this region, as well as with what we mean when we say, as we so often, even people who don't work in education, just casually will observe that, education is in crisis in South Asia. But what that crisis is how, it very much precedes the pandemic, but the ways in which it has been exacerbated through the pandemic is something that came across really beautifully here in very different contexts. So thank you so much for that. I also want to thank the excellent chairs for the deftness with which they managed every panel and roundtable, and especially to the conference support team of Chase, of Thebe and Shivani Mishra, who've been, I think, lighting up social media with updates on the event over the past 2 days. So, you can't kind of miss this event as and when it's been happening. Now, I don't want to stand between you all and the poetry performance that is just coming up for much longer, but just as a final word, I do hope the alliances and conversations that have been opened up over the past 2 days can be kept alive in the future. I know Karen, Oma, and Mohini have been sort of thinking about ways in which this can keep going forward, and I really hope that does happen. And perhaps in a truly post-pandemic world, whenever that may arrive, we can hold these discussions in person here in Oxford itself. So let's sort of live in hope for that happening sometime in the near future. So once again, very, very many thanks to Uma, Mohini, Karen, and all the participants from around the world, and particularly from South Asia, for organizing and for being part of this vitally important conference. And congratulations to all of you for holding such a thought-provoking and successful event. So that's it from me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Narika, and thank you so much for your support, not just for today, but for all the support, for all the work that we've been doing here at Education South Asia and at CSAP. Thank you so much. I would now like to invite my co-convener Mohini to introduce our final event and close the conference. But while our performers and we all are getting ready for the final performance, I would like to launch the poll again, because there were few people from room B who were not able to fill the post-conference poll. So I will just launch that for a moment and keep it on for a few seconds, and then we'll move on to the final performance. I will just doing that, and now you should be able to see a few questions on your screen. Okay, I think the poll has ended, and now I'll hand over to Mohini for the final event.
Thank you so much, Uma, for this, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of organizing such an exciting initiative. Thank you so much, Professor Valentine, for giving us the closing speech. It was really, it was just very moving to hear you say that, and I'm really excited about all the things that we can do going forward with this initiative. Thank you, Professor Mathur, for being a part of this and supporting us during this conference as well, and being a part of, despite traveling between different countries, you've managed to be a part of this conference. We really appreciate that. Thank you so much. We've now come to the close of this conference after 2 very unforgettable days. All of our conversations have been so insightful and so inspiring. If any of you has missed any session, please feel free to head over to our YouTube channel. You'll be able to find all the sessions recorded on the channel there. Like everyone has sort of emphasized already, I'm sure this is only the beginning of a very long-lasting alliance that we hope to form and maybe hope to host at Oxford very soon in the near future.
I'm now going to move on to our final event, which we've been looking forward to. This is the event titled Young Voices from South Asia, a spoken word poetry performance by youth artists across the region. So without wasting any more time, I'm going to invite our first performer, Seep Agrawal, who works at UNICEF India, and she'll be talking to us about how the pandemic has disproportionately impacted learning in the South Asian context. Over to you, Seep. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you so much, Mohini. Am I audible?
Yes.
Perfect. Good evening, everybody. My name is Seep, and the poem I'm going to be sharing today is called A Statement of Purpose. I wrote this poem almost 3 years back when I was 20 years old and in my last year of college as a retake on college essays and SOPs, because I was in the process of filling some master's applications, and I realized that there was one common denominator in all of them that needed me to tell my life story in not more than 400 words. And I found that to be very disillusioning, very insubstantial. And I think everyone here who has ever written a college SOP or essay will relate to this feeling, right? Of how just 400 or 500 words are not enough to say everything we're feeling. And so in my own process, I actually ended up writing this poem instead of filling out my master's applications. And I decided that versus pursuing a career in biology, because that's what I majored in, I wanted to do something that made me really happy, that I was extremely passionate about, which was to ensure that there is space for all of our stories to be heard beyond just 400 words. It's actually really, really surreal to be performing this poem here today, because in a lot of ways, this poem redefined what learning looks like to me, and to have it be part of a conversation that seeks to reimagine learning on a much larger scale, especially in the post-pandemic context, I think is really powerful. And I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity. This poem is called A Statement of Purpose. I want to start this by saying I do not know how to say this. There are too many people who've said what I want to, but someone once told me our stories are not like the ocean in the sense that they're all consuming, but like the ocean in the sense that you could hear the waves crashing for hours and still not tire of the voice. So I'm hoping there is dignity when I drown. Also, this will sound more like a poem than I intended to, because I don't know how else to say that I'm 20 and I want to change the world. Or that when I look into the mirror, I sometimes don't see me at all, but all the people I wish I could be. Or that I feel like I'm missing something, like looking at my life, but like an outsider, always through binoculars and zooming in on the wrong parts. Or like in a waiting line to sadness, wondering if this is my cue to stop being happy. There is no one way to turn 2 decades into 400 words, I have learned. There's no one way to say that here, this took my life and turned it upside down like an hourglass, so I'm looking for who I am again. And funny, because I'm now at a point in my life where I get to decide who I want to be for the rest of it. A conundrum I do not know my way around, because last summer when I was so sure, I was told to detach, work on the science. Darling, there is really no room for emotions in here, and now I'm not so sure anymore. I'm not sure I can handle any more detachment. I'm not sure these fingers can touch bloodstains and not tremble. I'm so terrified of the world and all its people. But this is not my scared poem. This is not my angry poem or my passive-aggressive poem. This is only to say that there is as great a chance that you and I are not feeling as there is about our lives turning out to be exactly as we've planned 5 years from now. So excuse me if I do not choose detachment as a career option. You see, 20-year-olds are expected to change the world, but also conform to it. Live but between the start and stop, be but without the being, so one. My voice is a teenage girl getting her first piercing. The courage comes as a consequence of it. 2, a woman disappeared into thin air a few months ago, but everyone who knew her only ever remembers the aftermath. How when they found her, she remembered everyone but herself. How she had answers, but no questions. I do not want to be that woman. 3, I'm very, very bad at learning a new language. I couldn't find the answer to where I'm from for days, and I kept changing it every time somebody said, how are you? So my teacher asked me to remember only the easy answers. I'm still learning what that means. 4, last September, I cried for a week. 5, on the 8th day, I wrote I had a yellow day on the inside of my hands and carried it around like a leaf. I was tired of hurting. I treated my days with a delicacy only others saved for me. A tenderness like my body was a house made of matchsticks, so I had to protect it from all the lightning that came our way. I put all my fears into a box and called it a body. Added all my mistakes to it, called it house, colored it with all the laughter I could find, and called it home. We learned to live here now, I said. 6, on the 15th day, I stopped crying. My calendar, a rainbow I'd never really read about. My insides more metaphors than oxygen. 7, this is only to say that nobody ever gets why I study biology and write poetry. I don't do. All I know is that poetry saved me when biology couldn't. So 8, maybe I like my metaphors a little broken and my poems a little unfinished. Maybe there's a little unfinished in all of us, a little incomplete. Maybe there are spaces here that no amount of validation or college acceptances can fill. A space that is ours to hold, ours to mold, ours to color, ours to fill with whatever makes this body a more of a home. 9, I'm learning how to fill this space, learning how to be like I first wrote a poem. Sometimes in the middle of the night with trembling hands, but sometimes in a room full of people, wondering why I haven't been doing this all the time. Thank you so much.
Seep, that was brilliant. That was so powerful and so thought-provoking. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for presenting this for us. It was also so beautifully connected with the theme of the conference. I'm really grateful that you are here and you could present for all of us at the final event of this conference. Thank you so much, Seep, once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're now ready to move on to our next performer. Our next performer is a master's student at the University of Oxford. Her name is Sowaibah, and she has a background in education and public policy, and also writes on South Asian culture. So Sowaibah, Shahbaz, please join us, and please, over to you. Please start your performance. We're really looking forward to it.
Yes, thank you so much, Mohini, and thank you everyone for this opportunity. I'm really grateful to be here. It's been very informative, and I think a lot of hard work went into it. So just trying to give my little contribution, and I hope you like it. So I'll jump right to it. So the first one is called What of the Children in Kashmir? And we'll start here. क्या गलती कश्मीर की ये है कि वो जिंदा है? Somewhere in the deep valleys of Kashmir, they tell me, what does it matter if you write? The bird inside you can't fly the cage, can't dream of being a sage. Propelled in rage, a strained image, caricature. Upside down, inside out, the schools are bound. Like the footsteps of a free man in a land making sound before it drowns. Says, let it stay. No range to disobey. Control the eraser. Try not to erase. Or perhaps erase the all too much. Can you believe all clothes remain? Free of the person slain by pain. So I have today many reasons to write. Collect, repeat, rewrite. We matter today. Thank you. That was the first one. And I will move on to the second one. I was inspired by seeing this video on how school children in Sri Lanka are managing between the pandemic because of obviously broadband issues, like many parts of South Asia. These students had to actually go inside of trees, and they keep climbing the trees until the broadband is good enough, and they share like these devices, and they're basically attending schools while sitting on trees. So yeah, it's a haiku, and it's named A School Day in Sri Lanka Mid-Pandemic. interweave in trees, braiding stories, broken net, R for rainbow, D for dream. And that was the second one. Which brings me to my last one, which I think is inspired by the current political climate in Pakistan around women being targeted and killed. Just recently, an incident took place that has put the nation in a lot of grief. And I think while that takes place in 2021, it has taken place for many, many years. And I came across this video of a Kathak dancer, Jahanara Clark. This poem is a reflection on the incident of Jahanara Clark, who alongside her father, Zahura Clark, were shot and killed in 1999 in their home in Lahore, Pakistan. Her father was a revered artist in Pakistan and a professor at National College of Arts in Lahore, NCA. And as I just said, Jahanara Clark was an exceptional Kathak dancer. If you haven't, you should definitely look at her videos. And you'll know what I'm talking about. So here we go. This poem is called Jahanara. The dogs are locked, while the brazen, nefarious men are free. As the cold floor spins around her stomping feet, the darkness of her hair, parted in the middle, makes room for unanswerable questions. I see my father paint peonies, uses hues of black and gray. From the narrow corridor where wind wrestles the drying sari, I glimpse at his taste. An unforgettable artist, forgotten like halted hiccups. Buried so deep that it takes 22 years to exhume. In those years, so much chance is gone. Wallpaper planes, spice fills the edges of verandas. What is it like to be an artist in Pakistan? Is it rich? Is it empty? Do I fill my stomach, or do I let the work fill me? What is it like to be a female artist in Pakistan? Does the smoke raising from her palms instigate, deteriorate the human in thee? Like the hues in Papa's paintings, the future is clear. It is unfair, despair. So this stomp your grace, stealing a mother's ability to embrace a child, a husband, a non-extinguishing grief. I am told it happens every day to artists that dare to breathe. The woman who lay unable to sleep, who dares intoxications weep. 3 a.m., hand held in air. You could not erase me. The end. Thank you so much. And yeah, that was Sowaibah.
Excellent, Sowaibah. You clearly write from the heart and it shows. Thank you so much for covering so many issues and so many regions in your performance. That was really, really moving. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Thanks for being here. We'll now move on to our final performers. I'm really looking forward to this performance. Pavna Singh is here to represent the Community Library Project from New Delhi, and she will be introducing our next two performers, Shivam and Shivek, who are students at the library, but also have formed an independent rap duo. We'll be listening to their rap about the happiness curriculum in New Delhi, as well as about the habit of reading in the community library. The rap will be in Hindi, but Bhavna will be setting the context for us before we listen to the rap. So thank you so much, Bhavna, for being here and joining us. We'd love to know more about your work.
Thank you, Mohini, and thank you, the organizer of the conference. I'll just take 5 minutes to introduce my library work, and then you will all enjoy the performance of the young leaders from our community. So I'll just get on to introduce what community library does. Just give me 1 minute. Mohini, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So sometime back, I was reading an article titled "Unpacking a Library: Baba Saheb Ambedkar and His World of Books," where Ambedkar said that workers must think beyond their status as workers and acquire political self-knowledge. I found it extremely important because having a political self-knowledge helps to locate the identity and place of every individual in the society and world at large, so that each one of us can speak for oneself individually and collectively as a part of the community. However, the politics of giving access to knowledge and literature only to a particular section of society and keeping the big percentage away from it and normalizing this visible power structure as well as invisible hierarchies are extremely dangerous to the evolution of self and communities we belong to. This large percentage of the working class and caste oppressed section in India has not only been deprived of the open access to quality literature and education, but also been making sure that they continue to internalize power structure and institutionalized ways of oppression and hierarchies in their mind. Therefore, to acquire political self-knowledge, which Baba Saheb Ambedkar talks about, and the rightful and just place in society, we need a free community library movement in India. The Community Library Project has been playing an active role in building the models of free, excellent, inclusive, democratic open spaces of libraries in Delhi and around the national capital region. We have been working in a manner where our communities who had been historically marginalized would have the right to exercise ownership over the library spaces, a library where they could imagine, design, and create a space which could respond to their lives, families, and communities' need. We have been constantly thinking and working on making such spaces of the library as the space belonging to the community, where they could not just have conversation on the subject of their interest and needs, but can also produce and perform their culture without being judged and discriminated against. This all has been possible because the vision and the mission of the Community Library Project is with us as a guiding light. We have been learning how to direct that light in our everyday work at the library and as a library movement in India. It guides us in finding a work philosophy. Even it helped us in finding our way through COVID pandemic. Because of the lack of intention and preparation on the part of government at every level, our members and their families, who are composed primarily of the working class and those oppressed by caste, were hit by the pandemic very brutally. We reached out to our members in both the first and second waves, and we witnessed the injustice and suffering through listening and recording their narratives. We made the effort to share the stories with the public and try to get the government to listen to their voices. Right after the announcement of the lockdown in March, April 2020, we met and brainstormed about how we can still provide literature as diverse as possible to our members. Consequently, we built a digital library named Dunya Sabki, World is for All, and started providing stories, read alouds of stories in an audio, video, and PDF format. Setting up a library on a website, build a structure to help empower the community to know and fight for their rights. The community library's culture of empowering ourselves by tapping into the power of the collective is best reflected in our young leaders who are taking center stage in their communities and also developing a creative forces. Today, you all will hear the lyrical forces that is Dastak, a rap duo of Shivam and Shivek, young men who are library members, community leaders, and truth tellers. They will present 2 tracks that question the status quo of the world they live in, but also speak to the power of reading, thinking, and finding one's voice. So the one track, the title of the first track would be Happiness Class, and it is a documentary directed by Samina Mishra, and our young leaders performed in this documentary. And I'll just translate the chorus of the song. And the chorus is the happiness period in school true happiness? Is closing my eyes in class true happiness? If yes, then why, when I open my eyes, am I not satisfied? And in my heart, there is still no happiness. And the second track would be, the title of the second track is Kitabe Bolti Hain, the books speak. And the translation of the chorus is something like this. Don't listen to anyone, the world is at madness peak. Noise can be created even by a drum that is weak. Let me tell you a secret hidden away for centuries. Come to the library. The books speak. Thank you. Mohini, can you play the, yes. Thank you.
Was the sound not audible? Sorry, I will just share this again. Please give me a minute.
रोज रोज निकला मैं खुशियाँ तलाशनी हर वक्त परेशानी कुछ वक्त मेरे हाथ में खुशियों के स्कूल में रोज होमवर्क करके दिखाना और देना बाकी रहता टेस्ट पूरा पूरा दिन व्यस्त खुशियों के नाम पर बस मिलता एक पीरियड स्कूल में हैप्पीनेस के लाश की फिर वही परेशानी घेर लेती मुझको चारों ओर से फिर गुजरना पड़ता मुझको खुशियों के लिए संघर्ष के दौर से
नई सोच नई उड़ान लेके चलूं पढ़ने घर वालों के हैं सपने मुझे पूरे करने छोटी सी उम्र में मैंने बहुत कुछ सहा अब मैं चला हूँ समाज में बड़ा बनने कुछ करने मेरे कंधों पे बस्तों का बोझ आँख बंद सांस लेता एकत्रित करता सोच किसी भी काम में मैं खुशी लेता खोज न छीन पाओगे खुशी बेशक कर लो अप्रोच यही सोच मैं पूछूं खुशी क्या चीज मन एक जगह लगे काम सारे स्टीज खुशियों की तलाश में न छीनो मेरी खुशी करो मर्सी प्लीज करो मर्सी प्लीज करो मर्सी प्लीज अभी बाकी रहता रोशन करना नाम माँ बाप का सपना और जीवन में आराम अंजाम अपने उड़ान को अभी देना बाकी है वर्दी में देखना ये सपना मेरे माँ की है क्या स्कूल में हैप्पीनेस की लासी असली खुशी आंखें बंद करके ध्यान देना असली खुशी अगर हाँ तो फिर आंखें खोलने के बाद क्यों मन को ना मिले संतुष्टि क्यों दिल मेरा दुखी है क्या स्कूल में हैप्पीनेस की लासी असली खुशी आंखें बंद करके ध्यान देना असली खुशी अगर हाँ तो फिर आंखें खोलने के बाद क्यों मन
को ना मिली संतुष्टि क्यों दिल मेरा दुखी है बोलती मेरी खामोशी आजाद रिश्ते दास्ता ढूंढने निकला खुशियां बेहद कठिन रास्ता पढ़ाई का रहता बोझ जो सड़क पर किटकिट रोज खेलना झेलना घर की परिस्थिति और ऊपर से डर लगा रहता अगर कहीं पेपर आ गया मुश्किल तो मैं कहीं स्कूल में हो जाऊंगा फेल ना
खुशनसीबी की खुशियों में हो मगन या शिक्षक बने भगवान करे न मन थोड़ी सी शांति जो मिटाती तनाव है खुशी मिले हमको हम कुछ पल के लिए आजाद है भूल के सामाजिक डर चंद खुशी ही मेरा प्यार है खेलते हैं सारे जहां गाड़ियों की कतार है सब ठीक बड़ा बनना एक मकसद करे मेहनत खुशी न मिल जाए जब तक तब तक अपने दिल को दे हम शांति हंसी हंसी से ला दे अपने काम से हम क्रांति क्या स्कूल में हैप्पीनेस की लासी असली खुशी है आंखें बंद करके ध्यान देना असली खुशी है अगर हाँ तो फिर आंखें खोलने के बाद क्यों मन को ना मिले संतुष्टि क्यों दिल मेरा दुखी है क्या स्कूल में हैप्पीनेस की लासी असली खुशी है आंखें बंद करके ध्यान देना असली खुशी है अगर हाँ तो फिर आंखें खोलने के बाद क्यों मन को ना मिले संतुष्टि क्यों दिल मेरा दुखी है
किसी के बात पे न आना दुनिया झूलती है बजने दो बजता तो ढोल भी है एक राज जो यहाँ पे सदियों से छिपाता लाइब्रेरी आके देखो किताबें खोलती है किसी के बात पे न आना दुनिया झूलती है बजने दो बजता तो ढोल भी है एक राज जो यहाँ पे सदियों से छिपाता लाइब्रेरी आके देखो किताबें खोलती है
बातों की होती शुरुआत है छोटा दिमाग तो बड़ा मिजाज है अपना तो एक ही मिजाज है कि पढ़ना है और पढ़ते ही जाना इस झोल वाली दुनिया से बड़ा बन के दिखाना है बड़ा बनने के लिए मुकाम भी तो चाहिए अपने आप को समझने के लिए TCLP वाला नाम भी तो चाहिए हाँ जाने से कभी कुछ नहीं मिलता मेहनत करोगे तभी मिलेगी सफलता अच्छे काम करोगे तभी खुश होगी जनता ना है लीडरशिप तो कोई गांधी नहीं बनता हाँ बनते ये लोग नेता और करते क्राइम में किताबें बोलती है यही अपना टैग लाइन है छोटे से ये कमरे किताबों से भरे हैं है ये निःशुल्क स्वागत सबका कर रहे हैं पब्लिक से तो ये काफी बड़ा है टैलेंट की है ना कमी क्योंकि यहाँ पे बहुत कला है कला तो यहाँ जी सभी के पास है जो हाथों से लिख दिया वो बन जाता इतिहास है जो भी मैंने बोला वो रहता सबको याद है आओ मेरे साथ सब बोले
सभी बोलेंगे किसी के बात पे न आना दुनिया झोलती है बजने दो बजता तो ढोल भी है एक राज जो यहाँ पे सदियों से छिपाता लाइब्रेरी आके देखो किताबें बोलती है किसी के बात पे न आना दुनिया झोलती है बजने दो बजता तो ढोल भी है एक राज जो यहाँ पे सदियों से छिपाता लाइब्रेरी आके देखो किताबें बोलती है 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 ना
Thank you so much, Pavna, for being here and introducing the work of the library. This was absolutely amazing. It was so powerful and so subversive. And I love how they challenge some of the issues that they brought up in their rap. And the writing is just brilliant. I'm so glad we could feature them. I remember listening to the library rap when they had created it some time ago. And I'm so glad that we could feature it today at this conference. Thank you, Bhavna, for setting the context so beautifully about the free library movement that you're a part of. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So thank you all of you who are here and who stayed back for our final event. I hope you enjoyed it. We'd love to hear your comments. Please feel free to tell us what you thought in the chat section. We've had, like I said, we've had an unforgettable 2 days, and there's just been so much energy. There's been such brilliant discussions and so many important points raised. And I think there's a lot for us to go back and think about after this conference. So just thank you to all the speakers, to all the chairs, to all the people who attended over the 2 days of the conference. We've really been overwhelmed by the response that we got to this conference. I'm just going to spend a few minutes on just doing some thank yous and wrapping up. Please bear with me, but this is important. I really want to thank my co-conveners, Dr. Uma Pradhan and Professor Karen Valentine, who were generous enough to include me as a co-convener of this conference. I'm such a great fan of both of their work. So this has really been a privilege. to organize this conference with them. Thank you so much for all the hard work that you've put in to making this possible. I also want to thank our team, our conference team, Shivani Mishra, Devika, and Chase, who've been so enthusiastic about the conference, this field of research. So I think we can all safely say the future of this field of research is very bright. If we have people like them who are going to be in it. So thank you so much for all the work and all the enthusiasm that you've shown throughout this time. I want to really thank OSCA, the Oxford School of Global and Area Studies, for all of their support. This wouldn't have been possible without them. Stephen Minay, the Center Administrator for the South Asian Studies Program, has really been a rock for us through this conference. So thank you so much, Stephen, for your time and your efforts over the last few weeks, and especially over the last 2 days. We definitely couldn't have managed without you. And also a special thank you to Professor Chris Gehry and Nayanika Mathur for opening and closing the conference. Your support means so much, and thank you so much for contextualizing the importance of the subject and this theme of the conference. Thank you so much. A quick thank you to all of our chairs and all of our moderators at the conference, David Gellner, Nandini Guptu, Robin Shields, Shrochis Karki, Amogdhar Sharma, Amina Singh, Cameron Warner, Todd Wallinius, Indrajit Roy, Cecilia Moinuddin, Sangita Thebe Limbu, and Nimesh Thungana. All of you were absolutely brilliant in chairing all the sessions that you did and taking out time for this conference. So thank you so much. A special thank you to Aarhus University for their support and partnership through this conference. We also received support from Wolfson College, which really gave us faith in this idea and made us take it forward. And a huge thank you to the ESRC Impact Acceleration account, especially Francesca, who has really been helping us enhance the impact evaluation of this conference so that we can take it forward even beyond these 2 days. And we really hope to do that. And of course, most importantly, thank you to all of our roundtable speakers, our live paper presenters, all of the people who sent us recordings of their presentations for the recorded presentation section and for the innovation spotlight section. We've been so fortunate to have over 100 people who've participated in this conference over 2 days, and we've learned so much from all of their work and their research. All of you who've been ambassadors of this program on social media and helped us spread the word. We've had so many people sharing our posts, inviting other people for this conference, and we couldn't be more grateful for all the publicity that you did for us. And it's because of you that the conference really reached so many people and invited so many people to attend. Of course, a big thank you to all the attendees. The response, like we said, was really overwhelming and makes us believe that this is an idea that we want to take forward and take very seriously. So I hope that we will be able to do that as we move forward. So once again, thank you for making this conference so engaging and so interesting for everyone. We hope that we'll continue to stay in touch. All of you who registered, we will be sending out a conference feedback survey. I hope that you will spend a few minutes on filling that up for us so that we can get a sense of what we can do better if we plan this again next year and going forward. And I hope that you'll also join us in creating a more sustained alliance, which we hope to take forward and continue these activities in this field. So take care, everyone. Thank you once again. Like I said, everything is
me as well. I just want to join in to say thank you. It was really our privilege to work together with you all. And I would just like to reiterate all the thank yous that she has already mentioned, all the names, Stephen, Devika, Shivani, and Chase, who've been really working really hard to bring this conference together. And thank you very much to all the presenters, all the chairs, all the participants for the opening and closing event, to Christopher Gehry and Nanika. And thank you very much for all this engaging and enriching 2 days. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll be in touch with all the participants and attendees of this conference over the next week. We'll be sending some more information about the conference and further plans. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Take care and have a great rest of the weekend.